Hello everyone, boxing friends. We're happy to be with you again. And today we're going to look at a very interesting question that concerns timing. We really want to share our opinion about timing, what it is, and what it's connected to. Because timing, there's this concept of redeemed time. It's the time a person has spent on education or training that has made them better, stronger, cooler. So that's what timing is. Timing is something that can change you because you understand time so well, you redeem it to such an extent that in some moments you even start to get ahead of it. In other words, you control time. On the other hand, timing is also a mode, a kind of routine, like your whole daily schedule. You start paying attention to little details that never interested you before, like how much you sleep, how much you eat, and how you approach these things. So it's both your psychological and mental state, and how well you can manage yourself and your time and adjust everything to such an extent that your whole life comes down to the saying, boys don't play boxing, boys live boxing. That's what timing is. Because essentially when you're in a fight, even if your opponent is very fast or very strong, you can beat him with two disciplines, distance and precise calculation, knowing this timing, how to dodge or at what speed a punch is coming. In other words, these are things you have practiced thoroughly and experienced for yourself. That is, you've delved so deeply into them that you can catch your opponent off guard, use timing in certain situations. For example, if your opponent is very strong, you can wear him out. How do you do that? These sensations of timing that you've experienced before during training, where you may have had to struggle and really push yourself, you've already paid for that time. That's why, in a way, the very state where you can tune yourself through timing, through what you've already gone through, comes naturally. That's why I say there are a lot of definitions that fall under this discipline, and you have to take it very seriously because, for example, training is also structured around a certain timing. 15 minutes on the speed bag, 10 minutes of heavy work on the punching bag, and then moving on to other equipment. On the pads, it can be up to 30 minutes, and sometimes you have to work on the pads for up to an hour, especially when you're explaining certain details. And there's something unique about working on the pads. This is where that timing is set, because you feel the athlete's power, you sense the distance, and you feel the speed. You're already evaluating everything. And at some point, you can even start to play along a bit. That's why boxers are not just recommended to hold the pads, not just to hit them, but to hold them as well. It's actually mandatory. Because all those subtle, tiny little things that you just can't explain, you have to feel them, you have to experience them yourself. So if you have the chance to speed yourself up in some small way, even if it's just a single impulse, over all that time, maybe even in your whole life, you can be faster than the fastest and stronger than the strongest. That's what timing is. It doesn't develop right away. And this applies to experienced boxers, those who, as they say, have already smelled gunpowder, and before the fight, you imagine one thing, but in reality, during the fight, when you see that you can't keep up simply because you haven't trained enough in that particular aspect, you start, for example, to adjust your timing, to give your timing, things like that. When you're working on the heavy bag, you become more aggressive, recalling past grievances and defeats, and you start to gather that impulse, and telling yourself, that's how it was before, but it won't be like that anymore. Now I know, now I overcome. How is this related to distance? Well, distance is actually, if a boxer knows how to maintain distance, understands what distance really is, all these different aspects, different angles, how to approach safely. So that's all about distance too. I mean, that's the highest level, that's like mathematics, the deepest depths. When you feel your opponent so well that you let him hit you, you're allowing it. And then, right on his movement, you pull off some kind of feint. Bang! And that's it. That's why there are two disciplines that are very, very important, and they're closely connected. That's distance, like your precise calculation of timing, and the time you've lived through and paid for, which has helped you truly understand what boxing is. Boxing develops you, and it does so in a very powerful way. Just like scientists conduct all sorts of research, a person's worldview can change dramatically in 3 years. This is called a paradigm shift, when a person's opinion simply changes. One of the motivators for changing your opinion is timing. Without timing, it's impossible to box. It's extremely, extremely difficult to box because, as I said before, when you're in a fight, your sense of timing comes from your past experiences. In other words, you need to know your own speed exactly. You need to know precisely the speed of your punches, your defense, your movement, and how you are positioned relative to your opponent. There are a lot of factors that your brain has to process. That's why, once again, I'm saying that timing is established right from the start as a kind of routine. There is a specific training routine, there are tempo-based workouts, and there are strength workouts. All of that is timing. Then there are workouts that involve equipment. You literally spend about 5 minutes on each piece of equipment. So you also need to have these kinds of workouts to get you as close as possible to real combat sensations. That's what timing is all about. It's how you get up in the morning and plan out your day. That's timing. What time did you eat? How did you eat? What did you eat? All of that is time you spend on precise, specific things. That's why timing is developed through experience. The more experienced you are, the more developed your timing will be. Because very experienced fighters, they don't need to be super fast or super strong. They'll just wear you out. And as they say, break you simply by using their knowledge of timing. Because once again, this is directly connected to tactics and strategy. Of course, this needs to be addressed from the very first training sessions, at least gradually explaining how important it is. For example, if you've been working out with dumbbells or kettlebells and you're exhausted, well, that's also part of your timing. You need to understand the moments when you're tired, when you're recovering, and how quickly you can recover. That's why training routines all differ in timing and duration. Sometimes you need to push yourself quickly, and other times you can relax a bit because you're really tired. In other words, it's about having a sense of time and knowing how to allocate that time. It's like there's a discipline of endurance, proper distribution of energy throughout the entire distance. It's the same here, proper allocation of time over the whole fighting distance. Timing can be a part of your mental experience. You realize, truly realize now, that you can't always be fast. And this realization helps you focus and mobilize all your qualities so that you can really deliver at the right moment. And that's exactly what you need to understand at the right moment, when that moment is, and the experience in your mind will lead you to it. It is developed. It's simply a matter of training. How do you want it to, well, fire off for you? Just live in it for a while. You need to find this in everything. You get up in the morning, do this and that, wash up, shave. How much time do you need? It's all about timing. Simple calculations. From a coach's perspective, timing is completely different. Once again, I like it when people say that a coach is a former boxer. This is a unique sport where a coach, a good coach, is not just a boxer, but a boxer who perhaps didn't fully realize himself somewhere along the way. That's why all his aspects, even in coaching work, have very, very deep roots. That is, they grow from an authoritative perspective because you've already walked that path. You know exactly where you stumbled yourself and how you worked through it. And the ability to read people, psychology, and those simple everyday moments, knowing what works best. These are the human qualities of a coach, the ability to recognize and time things with people. I know for sure, I know exactly that he needs this particular mode, because otherwise, well, he only does things as long as he enjoys them. If he doesn't like it, he won't do it. So you need to find the right mode and approach in terms of timing to help him develop. If you use this method with someone else, you might ruin them. That's why he needs a completely different approach. And this approach is a human one. That is from the perspective of experience and wisdom, so that the subject helps him develop his mind, develop, well, his sense of timing and so on. There are a lot of disciplines in boxing. Once again, the reason why this is a sport of such high status is because it develops the brain by miles. If you actually hook a person up to sensors, for example, when they're working out rhythms, whether on a heavy bag, a speed bag, or a double end bag, you'll see this. The brain makes decisions in fractions of a second that are just incredible. At the same time, your inner emotional strength also has to be extremely powerful. That's why, from a coach's perspective, it's invaluable experience, not only as a very good boxer, but also as a truly outstanding person. So the coach himself is a role model for the athlete. In other words, he is the athlete's inner eyes. That's why everything is read so individually, because what's good about group training is that there is a shared spirit. And this spirit, yes, it can be unified. But there is also an individual aspect which can be expressed in words, or sometimes you need to work through certain things together. That's why taking this timing into account is, well, key, you could say. Because one person might need a month of training while another only needs 3 days to understand. And besides just understanding, you also have to actually do it and calculate everything. And do it in a way that helps you so that it's effective. It's like two disciplines, so that it leads you to victory. Among the greats, among the truly great people I've had the chance to see in high level, top-tier boxing, I haven't known a single one who didn't understand what timing is. With all due respect, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to keep answering them. I really like that things like this are still, for now, still alive. See you all next time.